On May 12th, 2019, a 4chan thread created with the goal of posting disquieting images that just feel off received this submission. The next day, on the 13th, a separate anonymous user submitted this text to accompany the image. If you're not careful, and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. Gotta save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. Are you disturbed? If you are, then you're not alone. Following the 4chan posts, the Backrooms quickly exploded and became the internet's next big horror phenomenon, sparking games, lore, discussion, and whatever this is. In my opinion, though, no piece of media to come from the Backrooms has truly encapsulated its original energy quite as well as Kane Pixels' analog horror YouTube series, which began on January 7th, 2022, with the Backrooms found footage. For those who are unfamiliar, in this universe, Kane Pixels' Backrooms series follows an organization named ASYNC, led by a Dr. Ivan Beck, and based near the Santa Cruz Mountains in California. Originally a biomedical institute, ASYNC performed experiments involving low-proximity magnetism throughout the 1980s in an effort to open a portal to an alternate dimension. However, in 1989, their seventh experiment proved successful. They would promptly name this new space either the hallways or, the more commonly used, the complex. With access to a seemingly infinite space, ASYNC sees the monetary potential in marketing the complex as a solution to housing, storage, and overpopulation. However, their accessing this space has led to some unintentional consequences. Following the establishment of the threshold, missing persons cases skyrocketed dramatically. Further evidence of this fact can be noted if we fast forward a few months. ASYNC has now begun sending teams to explore and document the complex, slowly preparing to propose their ideas to the federal government for funding. On the February 3rd, 1990 expedition into the complex, a team discovers a body who appears to be covered in a strange black bacteria. The biologist who performed the autopsy on the body 2 days later notes that the state of decay is incredibly unusual, as some parts of the body have remained intact, whilst others are completely taken over by the bacteria.
Well, really, I don't know what to make of this. Mr. Beck, may I ask where this subject came from?
It is implied then that this biologist is unaware of the Backrooms, and that Ivan Beck, who is leading ASYNC, is completely aware of what's happening. At least, now, he must be. At about the 2-minute mark in autopsy report, we can see a cut-off picture of an employee contract termination paper, and we can assume this biologist was fired for asking too many questions. On February 29th, a team of 4 enters the complex to perform yet another expedition. Among these 4 are George Levy, Marvin Lee, Ronald McCarthy, and Peter Tench. Peter is the designated camera operator of the team, and upon hearing a strange noise that sounded almost like a large crowd of people,
Guys, can you hear this? Hey guys, can you hear this? Hey!
He isolates himself for a brief moment to investigate and become separated from the other 3 members of his team. From their perspective, he has vanished without a trace, and a search and rescue effort was attempted, but ultimately ASYNC higher-ups made the executive decision to stage a car wreck, rather than be honest, under the guise of providing closure to the family. Following this, ASYNC would construct a new control area near the threshold and set up movement detection cameras. These cameras would later identify an anomaly, confirming that the complex may not be as safe as ASYNC would have hoped for. On May 6th, a team is sent to explore an area with pitfalls, and Marvin Lee, the camera operator and previous team member from the other incident, falls while attempting to cross to the other side. He finds a suburban neighborhood distorted just enough to feel uneasy, but not enough to elicit immediate fear and panic. He finds evidence of someone having been there before and hears a voice. However,
Looking down there? That's not possible.
Hey! Can you hear me?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Marvin,
That's not a person.
what is that?
That is not a fucking person!
What? Marvin, talk to me. What do you see? What's going on?
he does survive, barely, and now ASYNC must be completely aware of the bacteria creatures. But despite this, the very next day, they have an arranged meeting with the American Department of Energy to show off their proposal for commercial use of the complex. Everything goes great, and at this point, they are pretty much just succeeding in deceiving the federal government. Except one mistake. One thing that they could have never expected at all. Peter, who went missing 2 months ago, reappeared. And this is where everything starts to go exponentially downhill.
Hi there, I'm calling from the ASYNC Research Institute in San Jose, California. I'm trying to get hold of my supervisor, who I believe is currently staying at your venue, Ivan Beck. So I've got a bit of a problem going on over here. About 45 minutes ago, I was called back down to KB31 because apparently, while the Department of Energy was reviewing our contracts, an employee managed to set off the complex motion sensors. Well, I tried to talk to him, but he's completely disoriented. He doesn't seem to know where he is or who I am. He said his name was Peter Tench. I'm the last one here. Everyone else is headed home. Wait, hold on. This isn't him, is it?
ASYNC has shown in multiple instances to be morally bankrupt at best, and that they'd go to great lengths to protect their reputation for the sake of their goals. So what happens when their biggest mistake comes back to haunt them? This is where the episode Damage Control comes into play. In Damage Control, we hear a press conference, and it's alleged that Peter fully understood the reason why ASYNC had to stage his death, and was initially cooperative.
Over the course of the following days, we were able to properly sit down with Peter and work with him to gain a collective understanding of what had happened. However, there was still the very significant fact that Mr. Tench was considered legally deceased as a result of the cover story, and reversing that would be no easy feat. He understood this and was willing to cooperate while we looked for a way to reintegrate him without raising suspicion.
After 2 weeks, he supposedly began to show signs of paranoid schizophrenia, but they also made sure to specify that they didn't believe he had the condition.
We did our best to keep him engaged, but it is hard to combat the effects of prolonged sensory deprivation on the human brain. And as a result, Peter's mental state took a toll. Not to a degree that was outright concerning at first, but around the end of week 2, we noticed that he was starting to exhibit a number of behaviors common in patients diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, though we don't have reason to believe that Mr. Tench was afflicted with that condition.
Right before Peter was meant to be transferred to a temporary above-ground living situation, he fled back into the complex. This would certainly make sense if Peter was showing signs of schizophrenia and believed that ASYNC was out to get him purely because of a loss of mental faculties. However, I have reason to believe that this is not the case. On May 25th, a team went on a routine expedition armed with a Remington shotgun in order to defend against a possible reappearance of the bacteria monster. What they found, though, was no monster. They found evidence of someone keeping track of where they'd been and markings on the wall. Then suddenly,
Oh my god!
He's got my gun! He's got my gun! He's got my gun!
Don't move! Never you move! Okay. I don't want to hurt any of you. But I will. If I have to, so please. Just keep moving. Just answer my questions and I'll be gone. How many people are out here right now? Down the hall, how many people are out here?
I don't know.
Peter?
Oh shit.
Marv? Marvin?
Yes, it's me. Is it really you?
Yeah, it's me. They took my life from me, Marv. Everyone thinks I'm fucking dead. My wife and children think I'm dead.
Can you please put down the gun?
Barbara, just tell me. Did they hold a funeral?
Yes.
This is Team A. Do you read us? Yes, A-Team, this is Mark. I read you.
Mark, don't.
What are you doing?
We need immediate armed
Mark.
support at room 14C.
Stop.
My team and I are being held at gunpoint by a hostile. I repeat,
Stop.
please
Don't
send
shoot him.
immediate armed support to room
Stop.
14C.
Don't.
Sorry.
does this sound like something that someone who understood why ASYNC faked their death and was initially cooperative would say? He's devastated. This doesn't sound like someone who's being cooperative. Marvin Lee, who was on Peter's team when he disappeared, tried to reason with him, and it almost worked. The only reason why he shot the gun was because Mark was informing the outside that he was there. In that instant, he feared for his life and determined that shooting Mark was the best option to contribute towards his survival. But if ASYNC really had his best interests in mind, how could that possibly be the case? Clearly, if you dig a little deeper and analyze, ASYNC could not have possibly had his best interests in mind. Following the shooting, Peter would escape out of the complex and into the facility. Though he was disarmed, at some point he would successfully exit, and Peter Tench would later be found dead due to him failing to see a dip in the terrain and falling headfirst into a rock whilst in the process of escaping. And at the end of the conference, the speaker says,
The tragedy of the entire situation undoubtedly remains, but Dr. Tench, regardless of how troubled he was in his final days, was a brilliant man who gave his all to this project. He would certainly not want us hindering it in his name. What we're doing here is so much bigger than any one person. It is the work of a unified effort, and we need to ensure that that is never lost sight of. That we hold on to the pre-established notion that Peter is and has been deceased. That is done, and there is nothing more to be extracted.
Damage control is the farthest along the timeline that we get to see anything related to ASYNC, so we don't exactly know what happens next, at least not yet. However, we do know from other videos that people are still falling victim to the complex until at least 1995, which is 5 years later. For now, I think that we have a series of questions to consider. Why were we shown a syringe immediately following the word extracted being used at the end of the conference. Speaking of that syringe, where did the bacteria creatures come from? The year after damage control takes place, Kane Pixels would fall victim to the complex and a bacteria monster, and his camera would reappear in 1996, which is the farthest point on the timeline so far. At the end of damage control, why did we see a figure running through a city? Is it Peter? Well, that wouldn't make sense because he should be dead. Why is the press conference video titled Damage Control? Did Peter really die? Did they try to kill him and fail? Why is this project so much bigger than any one person? Considering all the evidence that I've mounted against ASYNC, the answer should be obvious. They need the complex, but their employees? Assets to be expended, if need be, all for the benefit of their own financial gain and growth. I didn't mention this previously, but the earliest episode in the timeline that we have so far shows Ivan Beck's signature, all the way back in the 70s. Considering that Ivan Beck is clearly malicious, at least to an extent, and is leading ASYNC as a corporation, it should be no surprise that Ivan Beck may be our main antagonist and the mastermind behind everything going on in the shadows. But for now, that's just speculation. And that's going to be all from me. Thanks for watching. Until next time.